Tom Clark's 6M podcast is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show. Hey, what is up? Welcome to Tom Clark's 6M podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark, and in this episode I'm joined by co-host Phil Lindsey. From the world of professional wrestling comes one of the most popular brands of all time, featuring a who's who of independent stars, all working together to deliver the best in-ring product possible, while also giving credibility to the largest pro wrestling company in the world. We're talking about NXT. NXT is a television brand owned and operated by pro wrestling giant WWE. The NXT brand features veterans as well as new faces to the company, many of whom are not yet ready for the main rosters of Monday Night Raw and Friday Night SmackDown. The brand was originally announced in 2010 as the program that would replace WWE's version of ECW, which aired on the Sci-Fi Network. NXT was intended to be a reality series, which would pair current WWE stars with top names from Florida Championship Wrestling, WWE's developmental territory. The show centered on a pseudo-competition between FCW's rising stars, all of whom were supposedly working to earn a main roster contract. The program gave WWE fans the opportunity to become familiar with many names, including Daniel Bryan, who would later go on to become a top star in the industry. By 2012, the original NXT concept was abandoned, as WWE chose instead to present the show as a standalone program. NXT would serve as the company's next developmental territory, and the show itself eventually landed on the WWE Network. NXT quickly became the hottest program in the company and boasted a main event talent roster, including Tommaso Ciampa, Johnny Gargano, Adam Cole, Samoa Joe, Finn Balor, Shinsuke Nakamura, and many others. The show also spotlighted an extremely talented and motivated women's division, which eventually produced Charlotte Flair, Becky Lynch, Sasha Banks, and Bayley. The quartet would come to be known as the Four Horsewomen and would go on to major success on WWE's main roster. WWE Hall of Fame and company executive Triple H was the man behind the scenes for the brand, and he was credited for much of the show's success. Dusty Rhodes was also a major force on the brand as well, acting as the head writer and creative director for the show. Even as NXT continued to gain steam with pro wrestling fans all over the world, WWE suddenly switched gears and moved the show to the USA Network. The move was made to pit the NXT brand against newly formed All Elite Wrestling, which was to air in the same time slot on TNT. A ratings war followed, with each company fighting for viewers on Wednesday nights. Though NXT held its own on many occasions, the brand's numbers steadily declined, and it was moved to Tuesday nights in April of 2021. Following massive talent cuts in the months that followed, WWE once again changed the format of the program in September of 2021, repackaging it as NXT 2.0. The show began featuring younger homegrown talents, and the overall production of the show changed as well, including a brand new logo. Though fans currently debate the pros and cons of the show's new direction, there is no denying that NXT has made a definite impact on the pro wrestling industry, which will undoubtedly feel the effects for years to come. And that's the lowdown on NXT. The episode you're about to hear was originally recorded in June of 2021. Now, I know what you're saying. Hey, my calendar doesn't exactly say June of 2021 right now, Tom, and it doesn't exactly say July, August, or September either. Maybe it says October. Hey, for all I know, maybe it says December of 2 years from now. Who knows? We can't exactly time travel here. We'll do the best we can. The bottom line is this. We do a backlog of episodes here on the show. Anyone that's familiar with the 6M or knows me personally or knows the co-host that I've employed over the past year or so, couple of years now, I guess, you guys know how we roll. We record a bunch of episodes. I've still got quite a few in the can because the commitment has been we release one episode every Tuesday. Come rain or shine, we're more dependable than the U.S. Postal Service, my friends. So there we are. There you have it. Nothing we talk about in this episode is necessarily out of date. Okay, everything pretty much still applies. The biggest exception that you're going to notice is we don't really talk about NXT 2.0 because, again, if you're looking at calendars and doing some simple math here, you can pretty well figure out this was recorded months before the advent of NXT 2.0, which took place in September of 2021. Now, again, depending upon when you decide to listen to this, 2.0 may or may not be a thing of the past. The company tends to rebrand, reprogram, reset, and redirect this thing meaning NXT, in all sorts of different crazy ways sometimes. So we don't know what you'll be looking at by the time you actually listen to this episode. So there you have it, folks. Just wanted to put that out there for you in case you were, contemplating or hoping for talk of Braun Breaker or any of the other new stars, new faces, or new logo or new colors that now accompany NXT 2.0. There you have it. Enjoy the show. So for a good long time, WWE was practically the only game in town. WCW closed its doors, and we've talked about this here on the show and also on Tom Clark's Main Event many times in the past. The fact that when WCW shut down, there was still pro wrestling. It's not like it all died, but Vince buys ECW, he buys WCW, he effectively shuts down any and all competition. New Japan was still a thing, but it was off the radar of most mainstream fans. All Japan was the same deal. You had other companies out there that maybe were or were not known that much to your typical everyday pro wrestling fan. But he buys up all the competition, and really WWE is all there is. After a period of time, however, of course, slowly but surely, streaming services become a thing. The internet explodes, and entertainment starts coming from all various different corners of the world. Next thing you know, pro wrestling's wide open. AEW is here now. New Japan has blossomed. TNA / Impact Wrestling is probably the best it's ever been in terms of it. It seems like there's a definite plan to move that company forward. Ring of Honor still here, still trudging along as best they can. There's positive things happening here. It would only make sense for WWE to have a farm program. And of course, that means you're bringing up talent from the indie circuit, from wherever you can find them. You're bringing them in and you're showing them your way of doing business, which we'll get into that, I'm sure, the way WWE chooses to do business in terms of TV product and characters and all that good stuff. But so the idea of Florida Championship Wrestling comes, and we know that eventually segues into the black and gold brand that they like to call NXT. So, Phil, this, in my opinion, this could be one of those shows where it's like, man, that was a negative episode. And I don't want it to be that. However, I feel like this is the tale of two brands. This is what NXT was and how awesome it was to watch and how fun it was, to what it is in 2021 when it's like, yeah, well, it's okay. So, yeah, I hate to be that guy. Don't want to start off negative here. I think there's a lot of good things to talk about on this show. But NXT, again, a tale of two different companies, two different eras. I don't know, man. What's your thoughts right now? Like today, let's start off with today. What's your thoughts today on NXT?
NXT is still a good show. Like, to me, it's still a solid place to go if you want to see straightforward wrestling. Wrestling without frills, not all of the filler that we get on some of the other shows. But for me, it's past where it was at its peak, and it isn't that far off of what WWE's other programming is at the moment. And I feel like that was the thing that made it good, is that it was so different from what else WWE was doing. And now it's just, I feel like it's getting closer and closer to the other programming.
I spoke about this, I'm sure, more than one time, but the whole idea of, as I said, this was supposed to have been for lack of a better term, the farming system. I mean, Major League Baseball has done it for years. NBA uses the D League. I mean, there's, they're not ready for primetime players. That's basically what we're talking about here. You're not quite ready for to them, you're not quite ready for mainstream. You're not quite ready for the TV product. You're not quite ready to be in the spotlight. So, you take these men and women and you put them in your farming system and you teach them your way. I don't think we can call NXT developmental anymore. And that's the word that we as pro wrestling fans use, kids, is developmental. We just say that. Well, she's down in developmental now. It's a nice way of saying NXT. I don't know. what's your take on what? All right, so what is this brand now? Is this the third brand as they like to say it is? They tout it all the time, but then there's a weird, like a bizarre twist of, oh, it's the third brand. Dot dot dot. But and then it's like, okay, I don't know. Is this developmental or is this a third brand or is it both?
I don't know what it is at this point, and I think that that's part of. I think that's part of what's hindering it at the moment, and I mean hindering for lack of better words, because like I said, it's still a good show, um, but I don't know. I don't know if they know what they want it to be at this point. Like it's like they wanted to fill both voids. They wanted to be a developmental brand and a third brand, and it's kind of neither at this point.
Yeah, it's like in a weird limbo. Um, I don't know personally how I view it, man. I would like to sit here and say it's a third brand because that's what they insist on it being. They've morphed it into the third brand. Dude, they call it. I mean, Triple H has called that many times now. And yeah, but how come then if it's a third brand, why is it not represented on the major events? Why is it not represented at WrestleMania? Why is it not? Doesn't the argument kind of fall flat? Doesn't the well, it's the third brand, Tom. Doesn't that kind of fall flat when it's not being represented on the big shows?
Yeah, and I mean, if it's a developmental brand, right? Why is it you have things like Keith Lee coming up to the main roster, and they so called there's no main roster anymore because they're both the main roster, but I don't care
Right.
what anybody says. Moving to Raw is a big deal. It's still treated as a big deal. So why is it when he's moved to Raw, then you have to repackage him? If developmental is the place where he's supposed to define his character and all of these things, why do you have to repackage him when you move him then?
I love that you thrown his name out first. He's the first name that we've mentioned. Good. I want to roll with that. I think Keith Lee is a prime example of how this thing doesn't work. And I'm not saying it's like this for everybody. We know that's not true. It does work for a lot of people. It doesn't. You can't apply the blueprint of how they want to do business with an NXT person and make it because of Vince. Because dude, they put a shirt on him. After the first week, they put a shirt on him in the ring. I'm like, it's almost like Vince said back, wait a minute, you mean this guy's big? You didn't know? You didn't know what he looked like. Like that blows my mind that he doesn't listen. And I know Phil, everybody says, well, Tom, Phil, Vince doesn't watch NXT. You know what? I'm so sick of people giving this dude excuses of why he does what he does. It's such nonsense. We wouldn't let anyone else get away with that except for Vince McMahon. No one on the planet, Phil, would go with, well, Tom, Tony Khan doesn't watch Dark. Excuse me? He'd be laughed off TV if he didn't watch his own product. But dude, we give Vince a pass all the time. Well, he doesn't watch NXT. Is Keith Lee a great example of a failed experiment? What has happened to this guy, man?
Well, at the moment, he's injured. I think that's the story why he hasn't been on TV right now. But it's so strange because it's like it feels like they used him as a way to make Great American Bash a big moment by making him double champion. And then they had no plans after that. And that's again, the detriment of where NXT is right now. I think it was better when it was a 1 hour show, everything was planned out, and you knew where these stories were going. Once it became a live show, it has some of the same problems as Raw and SmackDown because they don't plan these things out. They just go on the fly. And, NXT just was infinitely better when, you knew what the trajectory was.
And here's the funny part, man. I don't know if it is on the fly. Maybe this is planned out, but it doesn't feel that way. You're right. It feels like they're shooting from the hip each and every show. And we've believed that about Raw and SmackDown for years because we've been told that Vince rewrites the show 20 minutes before airtime or whatever it is. And you're like, what? The whole show? Like, okay, what do you have all these people for at the great big meeting table in the big conference room with their lattes? What do you have all these people for if the old man's just going to tear it up? And what? But like, I don't know that I've necessarily heard that about the NXT brand, but dude, it does look as though, again, they're just shooting from the hip. It's uncoordinated. It's chaotic at times. Stuff that they start last week, they didn't follow through on. They promise you matches that they don't deliver. They've been doing that for years. And it's getting worse, it seems. I mean, it's like you said earlier, it's too much. Maybe it's too much like a third brand, and that's to its detriment. I mean, I think what made this show great once upon a time was that it was special. It was unique. It was different. It was a taste of WWE. It was a sampling. It was a sample cup. It wasn't the full-blown meal. I think that's what made it good, was that it felt like something else altogether. What about this idea, man, of going back to the Keith Lee thing? It's like, well, he's an indie guy. And you know, when you get labeled as that for whatever reason, it's hard for some people to come out from underneath that. But well, NXT is not an indie brand. It's not. It's owned by the biggest pro wrestling company on the planet. So it's not an indie brand. But it's like, well, the tone of NXT is, this is an indie show. We know it's not, but that's the tone. That's what they try to put over to you. So people, they have success on the brand on TV. But the minute you try to translate that to the main roster, something's lost in translation because the guy at the top doesn't understand indie wrestling. He doesn't get the connection. Am I off base here or what?
Yeah, I mean, let me preface this by saying this. NXT at its peak was amazing.
Yes.
I would say around the time when Balor was champion and it was like really moving, like it was the best wrestling show on television. And man, this might be a little bit of a hot take because I see this on Twitter quite a bit. Was the Attitude Era the best era of wrestling?
No.
I would say NXT at its peak was the best WWE has ever been in terms of storytelling, in terms of, in-ring work rate, whatever else you want to throw in it. I think it is the best it's ever been. Yeah, but that gets back to today, and you say that what it's trying to emulate is an indie promotion. Specifically, what it's basically emulating is Ring of Honor. And you can see that in a lot of guys they sign there. I mean, Kevin Steen, Sami Zayn, Adam Cole, Kyle O'Reilly. You go on and on and on. And they've done basically like a covers version of all of those feuds.
Right.
And that's not to say that they weren't all great, but it's contingent on you not watching Ring of Honor or you not enjoying some of these other things. And a lot of WWE fans did not watch those things, so they don't know what they're riffing off of. And again, that's not to say that it's a ripoff or that it's not good in its own right, but it's clearly trying to emulate something that is already there. And I think because of that, WWE has trying to create it in their mind that, oh, we created this new and fresh thing. You created this new and fresh thing for you, but it already existed elsewhere in the industry.
Right.
You took this new and fresh thing and you put it on a platform for a bigger audience.
And we talked about that on the Ring of Honor episode. The entire summer of Punk had already been done. Like almost the whole thing. I mean, not the Triple H and Batista stuff or that was thrown in and Kevin Nash. I mean, all that's their people. But like the whole, I'm leaving, I'm quitting, I'm doing this, and you people suck. And he'd already done all that, but unless you were a diehard pro wrestling fan, you didn't know that. So they took credit for that and said, oh, well, this is, like you said, this is us doing it. No, it's not. Without Punk, you wouldn't have had this. And Punk did this one time already. And Punk absolutely admitted, yeah, I did this in Ring of Honor. I caught the pipe bomb in Ring of Honor, and no one heard it because they didn't have the viewing audience that WWE has. So yeah, they're absolutely taking other ideas, but I mean, they've kind of always done that. It's just that now it's way up in your face, and they're not shy about letting you know. Well, it's national TV now. I mean, how in the world do you pass this off as being? And like you said, it's a cover version of Ring of Honor. That really is what it is. That may be the best way I've ever heard it put, man. It's a cover version of Ring of Honor. They just got, well, I can't say they have more money than Sinclair because they don't, but they put more money into it than Sinclair does anyway. So yeah, I mean, dude, be honest, man. Like they don't have a lot. I mean, we could sit here right now and name off every star that they have at the top that came through Ring of Honor first. It's crazy how many guys there were.
Yeah, when you think of all of the guys that came from there, and I mean, at this point, guys that came from New Japan and some
Yeah.
other place, and that's the other weird thing about it being quote unquote developmental. These are guys that have established themselves as names somewhere else. You're putting them into your system and teaching them, the WWE house style, and you're treating them as if um, they're part of your process. They're stars because of the process you put them through here. Like Finn Balor is not a star because of WWE.
No.
Prince Devitt is one of the most influential wrestlers of the last maybe 5 years. So he already had a name and influence before he came to NXT. Now you put him on a bigger stage, and now more people in the US know who he is.
Right.
But that doesn't mean you made him into a star. He was already a star. Like Shinsuke was already a star.
Yeah, they didn't need him. He doesn't need them. But, as we've said before about Nakamura, he's happy. His family's happy. They like it over here. That's what I've heard for years, that he's pretty acclimated and he enjoys living here. And is he a top guy? No, but does he need to be? Does he care about it? I don't know if he cares about it. Is he comfortable? We've heard for a long time he's paid much better here than he was in New Japan. So you put all that together, and he seems like a pretty happy guy. I mean, I can't fault him for that, but he was a king in NXT, man. I mean, Finn was, yeah. I mean, we didn't exactly get Prince Devitt in NXT. We're kind of getting more of that guy now. And dude, let me jump back to this whole brand versus developmental nonsense that we can't seem to figure out amongst all of us together as a community. You can't, dude. If you're gonna be a third, oh well, they're a third. Okay, great, they're a third brand, great. But why is it that the NXT people on the main shows can just go back to NXT whenever they want to, but you're not going to see that between Raw and SmackDown? Like we've got a draft coming up, I think at the end of August. God help us all. Here we go again. Okay. I know. So like then it's going to be, well, this guy's going to be, oh, isn't this great? He's going to move here. But they can go back to NXT anytime they want to because NXT's not a third brand. It's not. Like we say it is, but it's really not. It is developmental. Someone made the decision, well, listen here, pal. We don't have anything from Finn. We don't know what to do with him. Vince doesn't get him. Let's just send him back down to Florida. Come on, man. Isn't that what we're trying to say here? That people get sent to this brand or sent back to this brand because Vince doesn't know what to make of it.
Yeah, it almost feels that way. It almost feels like, hey, well, it was better when you were in this little corner of the world, independent of what Vince has some say so on. Even though it seems like at this point he has say so over NXT, I'm not sure.
Right.
But hey, let's put him over here where he doesn't care as much, and you can do your thing over here, but not on the main shows. But again, you're supposed to be a third brand. You're supposed to be a part of. You're part of the main roster at this point. But here, like, oh, just over here, like Ember Moon, for example. Like, no, Ember is fantastic. Like, it seems like she should have been able to excel on Raw or SmackDown.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason that didn't work. Now she's back on NXT, and it's kind of like, yeah. You're great here. Don't worry about it. Let's put you back in NXT title picture. Let's put you in the NXT women's tag team picture. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Like let's find the niche that this person had. Dude, listen. I'm kind of jumping around here from person to person, but look at Kyle O'Reilly. He's a great example of what I'm trying to say here, man. What the point I'm trying to get to here. Do you, honest to God, Phil, right now in 2021, believe and can tell me with a straight face without laughing that Vince McMahon knows what in this world to do with Kyle O'Reilly in his denim jacket, pantomiming a guitar coming down the ramp? We all know this guy can work circles around a lot of people in that locker room, period, end of story. Vince does not have a clue. And maybe I'm dead wrong. I don't know. But from where I'm sitting, dude, he'd take one look at him and go, "What am I going to do with this guy?" You see what I'm saying? I, I just don't know if I see it. And Kyle's great, but main roster when with Vince calling the shots, shut up. I just don't see it. I think that's why NXT. Let's get to it. The bottom line here on the brand stuff, if I can, is it is this like, well, listen, we're signing all this talent. We got to have somewhere to stick them. Let's just stick them down there. Isn't that what we're really saying? On top of send them back because they're not ready for the main roster, let's just put them here because we got to have overflow. They catch the overflow. Is that what I'm trying to get at here?
Yeah, I'm not sure. It just seems like, hey, here are a bunch of smaller guys that we can emulate what Ring of Honor and other companies are doing with smaller guys. Let's do it here. But when we get back to Raw SmackDown, it's the same aesthetic that we've always used of the bigger guys and, maybe a handful of smaller guys that will let, excel up to the top of the card. Um, I don't know, man. And I think Kyle is definitely one of those guys. I think Adam Cole is one of those guys. I think that's the reason why Adam Cole hasn't left NXT yet, because he's ready at this point. I mean, you can't get much hotter than Adam Cole is, and I just think there's always going to be a point where, you know, there's a ceiling for smaller guys. Like unless you're like the cream of the crop, like a Daniel Bryant, there's always going to be a ceiling for you at WWE.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate, but we've always heard WWE referred to as the land of giants. I mean, from the time you're a little kid, if you've seen or heard one documentary about anything involved in this company, to the time you're a full blown adult watching WWE product, you've heard the term land of the giants because that's who they've always been. Vince loves the big man. There's something else I've heard since I was a kid. Vince loves the big man because he does. I mean, but then you got AEW who's got some big guys, but Ring of Honor, best example, obviously. Not everyone in New Japan's huge. I mean, they got some big guys, but not everybody is huge, like Lance Archer. I mean, plenty of smaller guys in New Japan that can flat out go. But yeah, in Vince's world, what, 6'5", 280, ripped. I mean, that's, you know, kind of what we're talking about. But dude, you look at a guy like Pete Dunne. How in the world can you discount Pete Dunne being that whole bruiserweight shtick? That's the real deal. I mean, he is good Lord. I
Yeah,
mean,
I mean,
I wouldn't
oof.
want to cross him.
Yeah, I mean, I was in the building when he won the NXT UK Championship at NXT Takeover Chicago, and when I tell you, it's still one of the best matches I've ever seen, live or at home. It's one of the best matches I've ever seen. Pete Dunne is amazing, and I feel like he is after he lost that title, I feel like he has been kind of running in place. Like it's like they move him around here, they put him here, and I feel like after he had that long run, it should have been a no-brainer to move him somewhere else and make him champion again.
Yeah, he seems like a man displaced right now. I mean, the whole pandemic thing happens, and he's not for whatever. And I don't know the backstory on him at all. I don't have any idea. I guess he does live here full time. It would make total sense, but I don't know that he used to because I don't think we saw him for a while, and then suddenly he's on NXT, like the main black and gold brand that we're talking about here today. Um, which there's a lot to get into there as well in terms of, what are we talking about with NXT? Are we talking about the brand? Are we talking about a worldwide. Let's take over the world with this NXT stuff. Let's take it everywhere. That kind of thing. Which we can get to that. Before we get there, let me ask you this. Back to the stuff of, oh, this is the land of the giants and all this. And we've always heard that. But something else we've always heard, which there is definite truth to this as well, that this thing wouldn't be where it's at all without Triple H. And people use this as, well, this is the biggest thing on Triple H's resume as an executive. And this proves that he could run WWE much better than Vince. I'm like, I don't know. I got thoughts on that. What's your take on that whole concept of, Vince steps to the side, Triple H takes the whole freaking thing over, man? What do you think about that?
Well, this is an interesting day to say that because we just got off of this conference call that he had, and boy, there are a lot of sound bites from this thing that paint a very complicated picture of Triple H. Now, I will, always start with love, right? So, Triple H has done some great things with NXT. He's done some great things in terms of what he's been a part of as a wrestler. Do I think that he will improve the company in some ways if given the opportunity? Yes. Do I think he's that different from Vince? No. He's a WWE guy through and through. He's been molded by that system. That's where he's had his most success. So he's always going to look at the business in a way based on the way that WWE does business. So he's not going to change the formula too much, right? If you come in and you work for KFC, right, and you make all this money working for KFC, and all of a sudden you get a chance to take over, you're now running the entire corporation. This is a preposterous story, but
rags to riches,
and you just somehow make it to the top of the food chain at KFC. You're not going to change much about how the chicken is made because you've already proven that you're making money, before. We're talking about a publicly traded $1 billion business. You're not going to change too much about it because you already are proven success doing things one way. And I think that's what some people miss. They think he's going to be the savior of the company. And some things he just doesn't have any incentive to change.
Plus, it's the Colonel's special recipe, Phil. You can't be messing with that.
Come on, man. You're not going to change the special herbs and spices, man. Like,
no.
You already know that, it's a success. Why would you change it?
Exactly. So you've teased our audience with the soundbite. So hit me with one. Give me an NXT related soundbite from Triple H here. You have one?
Oh man. So let me get one queued up so that I can read it word for word. I don't want to misquote him.
Don't want to misquote him. Absolutely not.
No.
We believe in sourcing here, kids. It's very important.
Our job is to get these things right. We don't want to mislead anyone. Okay, so one of the ones that took off was what he said about doing, if there were plans to do an all women show. Now the story behind this is Mickie James wanted to do an all women show, and she was told no, and she went to NWA, and it looks like NWA is going to try and do one called Empower. So there are plans in place to do that, and these are all off the back of WWE Evolution, which was in October 2018, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
And so, there's been a demand for a follow-up show and another all-women's pay-per-view ever since. And, there's clearly a demand from the women's roster and people like Mickie James. So Gary Cassidy from Inside the Ropes asked him on his conference call, and this was Triple H's answer. Haven't we already done them? It's a funny thing to me. Equality is equality. Equality is not, I want my own show. Equality is not, we have our own program. If I told you that I was making all men's program and didn't want women on it, it would be criticized. So I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I think it's funny when people go, I want the best in the world regardless of contractual statuses. From a business standpoint, why do we have contractual status? It doesn't make any sense. If you want to wrestle the best women in the world, come to WWE. That's where they are. If you want to go elsewhere and say they are, that's an opinion, and you can. I'm all for it, and one of the biggest drivers of it. Will we do another all women's event down the line? Possibly, but it's not a must have at the moment. I think we do an amazing job of displaying our female athletes. Is it perfect? No. Will it always be in flux? Yes, but we do a pretty great job at it. In my opinion, the best female performers in the world are in AEW. I mean, not in WWE. If they are not, they want to be.
Boy, listen, let me tell you right now. First take off what you just said, if that doesn't tell all the diehard WWE people out there that this guy is not going to revolutionize this company if and when Vince moves aside, nothing will tell you, because that was horrible.
Boy, there's a lot to take from that quote, and that's why that's the quote that has been the biggest soundbite from this conference call.
Yeah.
Oh man, so there's so much there. I mean, Jeff, first of all, what he says about equality is just it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it just kind of throws into question everything that they say they wanted to do with the women's revolution, and certain things that they claim that they are behind. And that's why I'm like, if you want to change the company that much, then change it. You're in a position to change it right now. And if that's your answer in a conference call right now, why would I believe that your answer would change if you were fully in power? Right? And right. I don't know. Like this was a baffling soundbite. And I think saying like, okay, we have the best women's wrestlers in the world. If you want to wrestle them, come here. It sounds like their usual tactic of, gobble up the competition and, hey, if you have a problem with it, hey, come sign a contract and wrestle for us.
Right.
Or, nobody else is doing what we're doing. So, if you want to wrestle at a high level as a woman, you have to do it here, which is totally not true. There's plenty of other places that you can wrestle on a high level if you're a woman. There's plenty of other places that are giving women opportunities. And that's why I'm saying, if he's the savior of this company and there's a change in mentality, this doesn't look like that's it.
No, not at all. He's a yes man. Again, Phil, I hate to keep going back to this, but the things that we've always heard. Vince surrounds himself with yes men. What was it Punk said in the pipe bomb? He surrounds himself with glad handling yes men. That's what he does. Well, guess what, kids? Shock time. I don't care what anybody thinks. Triple H is a freaking yes man because he didn't challenge any. He came out and said this. He didn't. This came from. I mean, I don't know. If this came from Vince, obviously he didn't challenge it. I don't know that it did. I think it came from him, and maybe a combination of both. He is going to toe the company line, and that's how it is. And if he disagreed, he could have said so. He could have said, I think it's a shame we haven't done a second women's show yet. The timing never seems to be right. We're not ducking it. We're not dodging it. It's definitely something we want to get back to. I want the timing to be right. I want everything to be perfect. I want the pandemic to be over. Phil, he could have said any number of things to not start a fire here, but he said what he feels. Isn't that what we're saying?
Yeah. It calls into question, why did they do the first WW Evolution in the first place?
Yes, I got thoughts. What do you think?
I mean, it seems like it was a deflect from the fact that they weren't allowing women to wrestle on the Saudi shows. So let's put this show on and let's deflect from that until we can get women on the Saudi shows, and then we'll try and make that into a historic moment as well and take all of the context out of it.
Yes, I'm with you. And kids, that reminds us to be sure to check out WWE's next pay-per-view from Saudi Arabia, WWE Blood Money. You don't want to miss that one. That's going to be fun. It's Blood Money, Phil. I'm sorry. I think we talked about this back when it was happening, or since then, or whatever. But yeah, dude, it's Hot garbage is what it is. Absolutely ridiculous. I mean, yeah, I'm not encouraged at all by this. And dude, how play devil's advocate for me here if you can. How do you defend any of this? How do you find there's no rainbow at the end of this, is there? Is there anything positive out of that one quote? I don't hear anything positive whatsoever. Do you?
I mean, to me, I don't know. I just don't know how you can justify acting like this is the guy. Like he's the guy that's going to save it, especially because of his position in the company, the way he's positioned himself next to the McMahons as a family. I just don't know how you could do it.
Yeah, I don't hear anything positive out of this at all. This all sounds like, again, he's towing the company line. He's spitting the corporate bile as much as he can. And it's absolutely terrible. And dude, he had the nerve to talk about if he promoted an all men's event. Man, this dude, that may be the most appalling thing he said, I think, out of that one quote. Because how many years did we sit back and watch the women get 6 minutes, 2 minutes, 3
Yes.
minutes, and there was not a pin? It it didn't end right. This was the era of the Bellas, and I'm sorry. I'm not taking this opportunity to crap on anybody, so don't take it that way. The Bellas didn't have a problem with it. I'm sorry. I'm just the Bellas started the women's. No, they didn't. Shut up. We know who started this. This was Charlotte, Sasha, Becky, and Bailey. Thank you, NXT, for giving us these women because that's what they did. They brought legitimacy to the women's division that had to deal with the Bella twins every freaking week, Phil, with their booty shaking and their booty shorts and they're twirling on the ramp and the girls are busting out of the shirts. I'm sorry, I call it like I see it. Phil, I don't remember them ever complaining, we don't get enough time in the ring. Come on, man. They seem to me to be perfectly fine with just going with the status quo. And then the girls from NXT come up and say, no, screw this. We want to wrestle. Am I reading this wrong?
I think there are two things that happen. I don't think that. I think some people attribute it to them. I think that they contributed to it in some ways. I can't dismiss the amount of non WWE fans that they brought to the product that were women. And, I think there are other things they did to help the women's revolution. But I don't think they deserve sole credit, no. I think you got to give someone like AJ Lee some of that credit. I mean, you've got to. There's numerous people you can give credit. I mean, you can look at what other companies were doing as well. Um, but yeah, I just think that's the beginning of our problem. Is if you ask the fans who started the women's revolution, their answer is going to be different. If you ask the company who started it, their answer is going to be different. And so I think the disconnect is right there immediately.
Yeah, the company's always going to back itself. And we did this and we
Correct.
did that,
Yeah, and let me tell you guys, any revolution started by a major corporation, major red flags there.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that I'm being presumptuous here by saying that corporations don't want a revolution.
No, they don't. Very well said. If a corporation starts a revolution, it's not a revolution. It's an ad for the company. It's to make you think. It's to get you in some weird way. It's and this I go back to Punk again. This goes back to the pipe bomb. This idea of he was allowed to say all this stuff. Come on. You and I both know they knew, if not verbatim, they knew his talking points, and Vince didn't care. He said, screw it, let's roll with it. So they did. But this idea of they're just going to let that happen. Punk spoke his mind. Shut up. Maybe he did, but it's not like they didn't know. Yeah, it's the idea of, like you said, it's revolution. No, it's not. Shut up. You're an idiot. If you think I'm falling for this. There was something else recently. I'm trying to remember, but it was like, oh, did you hear what he said? Oh, did you hear that? Oh, he called it. And I'm thinking, have you people not learned a thing? They allowed him to say this. This is not what you think it is. But that's proof positive, Phil, that people fall for this stuff. You know what I mean? They fell for the revolution idea. I mean, Yeah. And dude, what about the four horsewomen that we just talked about? I mean, without them, this thing may not have moved forward. And they started in NXT. Could we say that NXT was the birthplace of the women's revolution? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I would say what was happening in NXT is I would say it's a bigger contributing factor than anything that was going on in the main roster. And I mean, of course, you have to credit the hashtag to give Divas a chance and some of that other stuff as well. But yeah, I mean, when NXT first started and they first established their women's division, I think, you can see right there where the company could go and where they could be if they treated their women well.
Absolutely. And women deserve a chance. I can't believe I'm saying that in 2021. I can't believe I have to say that about any of these freaking companies. Everybody should be on board at this time. Everybody by this point should be on board. It shouldn't take, the evil billionaire company, the freaking Yankees. It shouldn't take the Yankees telling you how good baseball can be. You should just know, well, yeah, I'm a fan. I love baseball. Don't tell me. Come on. Women have a place. Obviously, they have a place. They should be main event. If they've look, it's the same as the men, Phil. To me, if you work your way up, you bust your hump to get where you are, and you earn that spot, you should get that spot. I don't know why this is still a discussion in this day and age. Why we can't just concede that yes, women have earned their spot. And guess what? If you put them in the main event, they stink the place up. Then you take them behind the curtain after the match and say, "Man, you girls really stunk the place up. What happened out there? I thought we had something here." You want to know why? Because that's what you would do with the men. You don't give them better treatment than the men. You hold them to an equal playing field, which it's to me is what you should have done. I think that's all they've ever wanted. I'm not going to sit here as the white guy in the room and speak for any female wrestler on the planet, but if it's me in their shoes, I'm thinking I just want a chance. I just want my shot. I'm not saying it's whatever. I just want a fair shot. I mean, isn't that really all we're talking about here with the women's evolution to begin with?
Right. Yeah. And yeah, I think that that's definitely it. And that's why I'm like, I don't want to diminish what NXT has done. And they have done a great deal. I mean, we're talking about Sasha versus Bailey. That's still possibly one of the greatest women's matches ever.
Yes.
Definitely going to be considered the greatest women's match of this generation. And all that it has inspired, the careers that it has launched, they deserve their credit for that. But I think at some point, if you are about that as a company, it cannot be just on one brand, right? And I think they have done some things to improve a lot on their other brands, but I think it's to a certain degree. It's to an extent, and then it stops.
Was it Taya Valkyrie? What's she going by now? I forget the name.
Frankie Monet.
That's it. I I don't know what to make of it. I mean, I like her, but I don't know what to make of it. I mean, that um I don't mean to disrespect here, but I'm blanking with Karrion Cross. I'm blanking on her as well.
Scarlett Bordeaux.
That's it. Yeah, yeah.
Well, she's just Scarlett now.
Right. She was kind of just running that gimmick anyway before she got to WWE. I guess my point here is I thought we were past the whole diva thing, and it's almost like the company is encouraging a return to the whole diva shtick. And Becky's not back yet, but I wonder if they were to keep cultivating this, and I don't know, but if they keep cultivating this idea, even in NXT, that well, this is a diva. This is what she is now. Here she is, folks. She's a diva, and okay. How in the world do you put Rhea Ripley in that mix? How do you put Becky Lynch in there? How do you put Martinez? I mean, I don't know. It's like part of me says, well, you should have variety, and you should be here, and here, and not everybody can be the same pro wrestling personality and the same. Hey, all I want to do is wrestle kind of shtick. I get it, But I don't know, dude. In some parts of this brand, I'm starting to see a rewind to stuff that I don't really care for personally. I mean, do you see anything like that happening?
I mean, yeah, when you bring back when you bring back Eva Marie in the midst of this, it looks
Ah,
away. And it does seem like they're going back towards some of that diva stuff. And I mean, I should preface this by saying the divas era wasn't a problem because the women themselves were the problem,
no.
right? It's not like, for example, it's not like someone like Beth Phoenix was a problem. She was there during the Divas era. It's not like Melina was a problem. Mickey James, um, uh, Caitlyn. I mean, Eve Torres. All of these women that were there during the Divas era. These are all talented women. Um, and when you paint it like the Divas era was an issue because there was a lack of talent. No, there wasn't a lack of talent. It was the way that you used them. It was the way that you presented them. You didn't treat them like a legitimate women's division, and that's why they were seen that way. That's why they were looked at as a joke. You didn't give them the correct amount of screen time and all these other things to get fans to care about them that you changed later. And that's why I'm saying it might not matter if you're doing stuff like Scarlett does, right? And you're doing, a little bit more of like the sex appeal stuff. None of that stuff is inherently bad. But if you treat the women like they're nothing but that, then that's the problem.
It's so funny, man. We went from like the exploitation of the Attitude Era, which is something no one wants to talk about, Phil. Funny how that works. People want to talk about the Attitude Era. Oh, it's the greatest, it's the best time ever. Greatest era of the business. Really? Let's talk about the exploitation of the women. Bra and panties matches, taking her top off on live TV, on pay per view, mud matches, was it nightgown matches, lingerie
Yes.
matches, lead and edge live sex celebration. Top comes off. It's frozen online for the whole world to see from here to eternity. Oh, this is great. This is awesome. That wasn't even that. That's ruthless aggression. I mean, dude, talk about objectifying women. Tom Clark 6M podcast is sponsored in part by Radius Law Group. Every day, Radius helps individuals, families, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations throughout North Carolina, Florida, and Pennsylvania resolve their legal issues by providing effective legal counsel in the areas of estate planning, as well as elder law and Medicaid. Radius Law holds the radical belief that working with a lawyer can indeed be enjoyable. So give them a call at 1-800-519-5667 for more information and tell them that Tom Clark 6M Podcast sent you. It's a whole other discussion whether or not they should have went along with it. Again, I'm not a woman. I'm not going to sit here and pass judgment. It's whatever. But, let's just don't forget the fact that what this company used to be, we went from that to, again, 2-minute matches with the Bella Twins and all this other hoo-ha nonsense. And then it took all these years to get to this point of finally they're taking us seriously. Thank God. Women all over the world that are wrestlers breathing a sigh of relief. Women who were fans. How many women are to the table now because of what started in NXT that maybe didn't watch before with their boyfriend / husband or whoever because they thought wrestling was weird, but now they love it because of the women. There's something to be said for that.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why I say I can't totally diminish what the Bellas did, because the Bellas definitely brought in a lot of women's wrestling fans that weren't watching before. I mean, they definitely brought in women that had no interest in wrestling. Um, and I think that the culture around wrestling has changed a lot because of that. I mean, when you look at that crowd that was at Evolution, that's different than any other crowd that's at like another WWE pay per view. And so to act like that's not something that we should still be doing, or it's not a necessity as he said it at this moment, I just don't agree. I mean, when you look at other indie shows that are doing exactly that and there's a crowd for it, then you can't tell me the biggest wrestling company in the world doesn't have a niche for it.
Yeah, I agree totally. let me steer this a little bit toward the idea of the NXT as a brand. And when we first were told about this, oh, this NXT thing, and it's we're going to do this with it, and it's going to go worldwide, and now we have NXT UK. Dude, I don't know about you, how you feel about this, but I think NXT UK feels like what NXT used to feel like. It's almost like they just passed on the idea of the brand to the UK version while they're off doing this third brand stuff in the States. Because the UK version is some good old fashioned entertaining pro wrestling, in my opinion. Not that the current brand isn't, but it's not flooded with all the hoo-ha nonsense of the main roster stuff. It's crazy.
Yeah, I can see that. I think the thing that NXT UK has managed to how do I want to phrase it? They've managed to sustain that NXT hasn't in some ways is the use of just strong characters and just all of these colorful niche characters that you wouldn't find anywhere else. Um, and I think sometimes people miss that because people think of it as like, oh, it's the streamlined thing and it's just work rate, work rate, work rate. And you got to remember the reason that NXT also was different is because they had so many characters that may or may not have worked on Raw or SmackDown. Like you had the Vaudevillains, for example. You had Blue Pants. Like Blue Pants is specific to NXT.
Yeah.
I mean Ascension. All of these guys like Tyler. I was getting ready to call him Tyler Bate, but
Tyler Breeze.
Tyler Breeze. All of these guys that were specific characters that became a thing in NXT. I mean, even when you look at like Finn as the Demon King and how that was just, intrinsic to what NXT was doing. You just don't see that same kind of character development and, those kind of quirky characters anywhere else in WWE outside of, like you said, NXT UK at the moment.
You said Blue Pants, and it puts that da 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 with Big Cass doing the Price is Right theme song as her entrance music. It just cracks me up every time I think about it. Cass and Enzo were an act that got over NXT. You put them on the main roster, and I don't know if they necessarily did anything wrong, but suddenly we don't know what we're doing with them. Oh, let's split them up. Oh, this will be great. Because he got one look at Cass and said, I love him. There again, Phil, the old man strikes again. This whole idea of what works in NXT and gets over and makes fans, not just in the States, but all over the world go, man, this NXT brand is something special. Vince puts his hands on it and then just wrecks it. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah, but that's again, you can't tell me it's developmental in one sense, and they've developed all these fantastic tag teams. Because that's the other thing that NXT did really, really well, other than their women's division. They had some great tag teams at some point. I mean, when you look back at DIY versus Revival and some of those great rivalries,
yeah,
like that was better than any tag team wrestling we got on the main roster. And so you develop all these tag teams, and then you bring them to Raw or SmackDown, and then either you split them up or they disappear. I mean, it's tough to name off the top of my head 2 NXT tag teams that have done well outside of NXT. The only one that really pops to the top of my head right now is Street Profits. You could say the Revival had some success, but not nearly the success that they should have.
Yeah, wow. Dude, you put me on the spot. I've never thought about that. But yeah, you're 100% right. I can't think of anybody else that really has.
Yeah, now do it the opposite way and pick all of the NXT tag teams that underachieved. I mean, you already said one, Enzo and Cass.
Yeah.
American Alpha.
Oh, yeah.
Vaudevillains. Ascension.
Ascension, big time.
AOP.
Oh my God, yeah.
I feel like I'm missing, but I mean, just the fact that I immediately came up with 5, and I couldn't come up with 5 that were successful.
Very good point. Yeah, yeah. And dude, it goes back to your original notion that this is just NXT is their version of Ring of Honor. It's everything that works in Ring of Honor done on a worldwide stage with the WWE corporate machine behind it. That's basically what I'm sorry, but this is not a diss on the current NXT talent. This is a direct comment on what they view this as. It's like, well, I don't know. Is this maybe it's their way of grabbing those Ring of Honor fans, those fans that swore they'd never watch WWE because it's WWE because it's awful, but now they might be watching because, well, a third of the roster used to work in NXT or used to work in a Ring of Honor. Maybe that's what we're talking about.
Yeah,
Crazy.
I don't know what to make of it, man. It's so strange because if it's a feeder system and it's doing what it's supposed to do, you've had so many success stories out of NXT. So why do you have these examples of you bring them over and then you all of a sudden go, well, they don't work in front of a big crowd. Well, isn't that what you're developing them for?
Right, right. If it doesn't work, again, all the way back to Keith Lee. Man, Keith Lee barely got a cup of coffee on the main roster. And then before the injury, they're pulling him off TV. And the story comes out something effective. They don't know who to put him against because he can't
Yeah.
do the stuff he was doing in NXT with the big man on the main roster. I'm like, what? That seems it seems crazy to me, man. Like you said, either they're ready or they're not.
Yeah. I mean, you can't pick. You can't say it's both. They're ready, but they're not ready for this stage. They're ready for that stage over there, just not
Right.
this one.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And it's I don't know. It's just such a strange way of doing things. You've got so many people that weren't even an NXT success, and they had all of the tools to be that, and they just, I mean, look at Deonna Purrazzo. I mean, holy cow. I mean, if you look at her right now, she looks like a massive star, and she never looked like that with NXT.
Right.
I mean, when you look at Ty Conti, for example, and how much she has improved in just a year somewhere else, I don't want to say that is a total indictment on their developmental process, but it definitely says something about the way that they do things.
Yeah. I mean, you take any talent, male or female, open the door and let them walk through it. See if they'll walk through it. You have to give you can't shoot them down unless you first give them the opportunity. And they never really gave her an opportunity in NXT. Not really, not anything substantial. AEW gives an opportunity, and look what happened. Lo and behold, she learns, she gets better. And yeah, she's light years better than she was a year ago. That's the true statement. Dude, what about this idea of, and I don't know how much people talk about this part of it. I know I've espoused this for years personally. If it's developmental and the idea is they're not ready, then why is this on TV?
Correct.
You know?
It's especially when you moved to network television. Once you weren't on the network anymore, then you can no longer say that because it's on cable television.
Right.
And that's why, again, if it's a third brand, let it be a third brand. But if it's not a third brand and it's still developmental, then what are you doing at this point? Because you've got people that are not moving on. You've got people that are coming back. If it's just a third brand, let it be a third brand.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling. Dude, as I sit here right now recording this with you, I swear I don't know if they know. I really don't know if they know. I think it changes as the wind blows. If it behooves them to say it's developmental, that's what they're going to call it. But for purposes of advertising, for investor calls, if they need to call it a third brand, they'll call it a third brand. Like it just, why do I want to define this so badly? Why does it matter to me? But I swear it matters. I can't even tell you why it does.
Yeah, I mean, because at one point I asked this question on Twitter, and I asked specifically that, what is NXT at this point? Is it developmental? Is it the third brand? Like at some point, I feel like you have to investigate that. And I got so many people that responded that were saying, why does it matter? And my thinking on it is because everything has internal logic, right? If you're telling me that there are call ups in wrestling where you're calling people up from NXT and they're coming to Raw or SmackDown, all right, well, if there's still call ups, then wouldn't it still be developmental? But then you can say,
Right.
well, the call up doesn't exist anymore. All right, then what exactly are we doing when you bring someone like Rhea Ripley or Keith Lee from NXT without there being a draft? You're just bringing them up by themselves. What is that then? It's not call up. That's what I'm saying. You have established internal logic at this point that your audience watches, and you haven't changed it or given them a reason why it's changed. You haven't given them a new system to that makes sense to replace it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's wow. It's a tale of two brands. I swear to God it is. It in more ways than one, that what it used to be versus what it is now. And also
Yes.
in terms of how the company looks at it. I really think it's going to change as the wind blows, which is, I guess for me, dude, what I'm trying to say is, uh, if they don't know what the identity is of this brand and they don't have a handle on it, then obviously there's issues. Like, not so much that I'm losing sleep over it. I'd like to know what I'm watching. And it's okay if the answer is, well, this is different. Cool. I can roll with different. It used to be different and it was great. But now you're doing this weird thing where it's developmental. No, it's a brand. No, it's developmental. It's a developmental brand. You can't have it three
Yeah.
different ways, for God's sake, man.
Yeah, that's why I'm like, everything has internal logic. It's just like there is the internal logic to what AEW Dark is and what AEW Dynamite is. Um, if you don't have that, it's confusing because it's like, okay, why is this over here on YouTube and why is this on network TV?
Right.
And I just think without that, it's some people might not think about this, but we're writers. We watch all of this stuff, and I critique this stuff, so I think about it. Like I can't not think about it. Like I over process and overthink everything, so it's not something I can ignore.
Right.
Um, and I just think it's indicative of a bigger problem with the company, where it's like, man, you I feel like they want to give you a reason where why you have to watch other programming, right? Like if you tell me today you only have to watch 4 WWE shows. What do you think those shows are? It's probably Raw, SmackDown, NXT, and I guess NXT UK.
Right.
Um, but there's got to be an incentive to watch them, right? Because that's a lot of programming. That's
Sure.
I mean, shoot, that's almost not almost. It's about over 10 hours of programming.
It's a lot of
Um,
wrestling. A lot of mic time in that company.
so if I'm looking at it from a point of view of a fan that only wants to cut that down to 5 hours of wrestling, if you tell me that somebody coming from NXT is going to get just repackaged and their win ratio and everything that we've come to accept from them at NXT is not going to matter when they come to Raw and SmackDown, why would I continue to watch NXT?
Ooh, good point.
Same thing with 205 Live. If you tell me that this is where the cruiserweights wrestle, but the cruiserweight title was on another channel, why would I still watch 205 Live? And that's just me speaking as if I'm trying to cut down on programming to watch. If I don't want to watch all of your programming and I'm like, all right, well, I'm just going to watch Raw and SmackDown every week, why would I decide that those shows are necessary when you've basically told me in some ways that they're not?
It's like they're just going to devalue their own product in some weird way, and maybe devalue is the wrong word, but it's yeah, I can't wrap my head around that. Like you said, what works here, well, it won't work here. Why? Well, because listen, Again, Phil, I go back to this. Why won't it work here? Because Vince said it won't. That's what we're saying. Nobody around him is going to disagree with him. That's not why he hired them. And if I'm making this sound to be more of like a dictatorship than it really is, my apologies. I'm not in the inner circle. I don't know what's going on behind closed doors in WB corporate. Obviously, I don't have any idea. Maybe I'm dead wrong, and it is more of a discussion than it is him with an iron fist. I don't know. Maybe I'm not being fair, dude. But it kind of feels like, well, this won't work here. Why? Because Vince doesn't want it to. He says it won't. Okay. So then we never know if Keith Lee would have been fine, if he would have been just fine. We'll never know now because he said he wouldn't, and he's got to change. We're going to change his music. We're going to change his look. He's got to come down off that rope. No more of these crazy. He's too big. Stop it. Knock it off. Okay, great. But what now? What is he now, though? Because, man, I don't know if you've seen on Twitter, but he tweets occasionally. Dude, he seems like he's busting at the seams to talk, but he can't. You know?
Yeah.
Crazy.
It's all crazy. And that's why I'm like, at the beginning of this, I didn't want to make it seem like, oh well, I'm busting on NXT. At one point, like I said, I loved NXT. It was the best wrestling show every week. Like
Yes.
I rushed to the network every week to watch it.
Yeah, same here.
But I at this point I feel like I'm kind of jaded by the fact that it isn't what it used to be, and then on top of that, I feel like almost like the jig's up. Like it's like, okay, we watched NXT with all this hope for all of these stars. We watched them quote unquote develop and where they would go from there. It's hard for me to sit here and continue to believe in NXT as a brand when I watched it during Balor's run and I sat there like, when this guy hits Raw or SmackDown, it's off to the races. He's going to be winning Royal Rumbles. He's going to be a world champion. All of these things, and then those things never happened. It's the same thing with Shinsuke. Looking at Shinsuke there and being like, I cannot wait till this guy, is holding the WWE Championship or the Universal Championship, and then those things don't happen. And that's not to say that there aren't guys that have done that. I mean, like, you can look at what it did for Kevin Owens, for example, and some other guys. But I mean, shoot, Samoa Joe. When Samoa Joe was there, it's like, man, this guy's going to be a world beater once he hits the other rosters. Never happened.
Never happened. The Finn Balor, yeah, dude. The Finn Balor, dude. They took the paint off of him. Like, to me, when I was writing about him in NXT, I was like, he's going to translate well to the main roster. He's exactly what they want. He's got the showtime, the theatrical side. You put that stuff on the WrestleMania stage with him coming down the ramp, crawling on his hands and knees with the smoke and the mask or the paint. Holy God. And then it never happened. Like you said, like, what, why? Or it happened in small doses,
I don't know what to tell you on that. I do think that they got to a point where they were using the demon gimmick too much as a crux. And, I do think it was needed for him to come back and reestablish why Finn Balor is a great wrestler without that gimmick. And it worked. But I do feel like once he got to Raw, after he got hurt, which was unfortunate, they just kind of missed what made him special during that NXT run. And he had to completely, reinvent himself.
Yeah.
And he had to reinvent himself because nothing they did with him after NXT was consequential in any way. I mean, he had a decent enough run within the Continental title. I thought he should have been champion longer. He could have been one of those guys that, helped to make that a workhorse title like Rollins did. And it just kind of didn't happen.
I mean, why did he have to pull back and realize the Finn Balor character? Why was there a need to pull him out of the paint? Why was there a need to recenter him? Why did they use it too much as a crutch? Why? Because they didn't know what to do with him when he got there. Because Had they balanced it the way they were balancing NXT, he could have been painted up every other week and it would never have bothered him. It wouldn't have bothered the fans. It wouldn't have hurt him when he wasn't in the paint. People wouldn't have gotten so used to it because they didn't know how to balance it. It was either all paint or no paint. And you see what I'm saying? Like again, Phil, they don't know how to handle these guys. Well, one guy. I'm sorry. I know it seems like bag on Vince hour, but I'm calling like I see it. Again, dude, no one under him is going to disagree to the point of being told to leave the room, unless I'm wrong. Maybe I am. I don't know. But if he says this doesn't work, then they're all going to say this doesn't work. And they're not going to write for him stuff that they know he's not going to care for. So if they write Finn Balor pins Edge or whatever, looks great, looks like nah, maybe it's not what he wants. So I don't know. I still think, and I don't know if there is an answer. I sure don't think it's Hunter anymore. Maybe I did once upon a time. Maybe I did. I don't think it is now. But if Vince is the problem, I don't know what the answer is. I don't know if they have an answer there now, which is all kinds messed up. Really. Crazy messed up. Dude, what about this idea of NXT being a global brand? Because we've always heard that they want to go to Japan so bad they can't stand it. What about that?
I don't, you're talking about their whole global localization plan that they laid out at one point where they were going to try and do NXT brands all over the world. Boy, when
Yes.
that first got laid out, I was like, boy, this sure looks like the whole, gobbling up the territories on another scale where you're just jumping into other territories across the globe and doing the same thing, basically. It just looks like the same business model. You're just doing it with NXT. And I feel like, that diminishes what NXT was meant to be. And, I don't believe NXT Japan will ever be a thing. I just don't think it will. I mean, even if they manage to launch it, I don't think it will be a thing in the way they want it to be. They just don't have a foothold in Japan where they can do that. It would be different if there is no Japanese wrestling. There's an entire culture around Japanese wrestling, and you bring in this gaijin company now that's going to now, quote unquote, develop Japanese stars. For what?
Right, right.
For what? To bring them to your main company? That's what you're gonna do anyway with New Japan or Stardom or Noah Stars that sign with you anyway.
And kids, if you think we're having heartburn over whether or not NXT is developmental or a brand, think about how much heartburn we'd be having if we were discussing this about NXT Japan. What is
Yeah,
that? Phil,
yeah,
what
because
even is it? It's just a show. It's not even a brand. It's not even, it can't be anything but a TV show, can it? Honestly.
that's what that's what I think some of the confusion with NXT UK is, because
Mm.
it's like, again, I see a lot of people that say they don't watch NXT UK, but what is their incentive to watch it?
Mm.
And that's not to bust on it, because there are great things happening on NXT UK. I
Oh,
think,
yeah.
like the Mako Satomura signing and the matches she's been having with Kaylee Ray, they're great. Um, Walter's a fantastic champion. The matches he's been having are great. Um, and like we said earlier, they're fantastic characters. Their stuff that they're doing is great. But if you're looking at it like, I already watch all of this wrestling from WWE, what is my incentive to watch another possibly developmental brand that we're not going to see the fruits of?
Right. The,
It's wild.
the logistics of it are mind boggling to me. And I don't know, maybe because I'm not behind the scenes, like I said before, it's hard for me to grasp. But the whole concept of, okay, this developmental, but you're in another country and it's pretty far from here. I don't know if you've noticed, Japan's pretty darn far from where we are. Um, how do you make that work? Like, and if you're a Japanese star other than Shinsuke, who do you have to point to say, well, they're doing right by this guy? I mean,
I mean,
Kushida,
Shinsuke
maybe?
Shinsuke was the biggest wrestling fan, biggest Japanese wrestler that they could have possibly gotten on their roster. And to say that they bungled that, I feel like would be an understatement. Um, I mean, he did win the Royal Rumble, but I just still think it is just baffling that you had the first Japanese Royal Rumble winner ever, and then you did the first women's Royal Rumble ever, and had the first winner is a Japanese woman, and they both lose.
Yes.
And I feel like that has gone back to every Japanese wrestler they brought in from then on. It's like, I mean, Kushida's finally getting some steam behind him now. I think putting the cruiserweight championship on him is cool, and I know he's gonna have good matches. But if you watch him in New Japan, you know that he's a great junior heavyweight. I want to see him be a heavyweight champion. When you look at guys like Tozawa, what are you doing with Tozawa other than having him run around chasing the 24/7 championship?
He's a
What do
ninja,
you
Phil. That's what he is. He's a ninja.
what are you doing with guys like I said, like, I mean, the fact that you bungled Kenta the way you did. And I know
Oh,
people are going to jump and say he got hurt a lot. He did. But when you look at what he's doing right now with New Japan, it's night and day.
yeah.
I mean, we can go down the rabbit hole of what the heck they're doing with Asuka. We're talking about one of the most dominant champions ever in the history of the company. And you've got her losing because of Ellsworth and Alexa doing spooky stuff.
Right.
It's astonishing. It's like, I don't know. Like I said, I don't want to dump too much on it. Like I said, I mean, Asuka's one of my favorite wrestlers. Watching her on NXT become this, this dominant champion, and prove to the world just how great she is as an in-ring competitor was amazing. But just watching it all jump off a cliff when she came to Raw was just, it's deflating.
Yeah, it's hard to watch. She's not the same person she was years ago. And Phil, I often say on the main event, there's always, almost always, two sides to this. There's the side that we all know, where we're all sitting back pulling for the talent because we have our favorites and we feel like someone's been screwed or not screwed, and why don't they get more? But then there's the other side, which is the talent's point of view. How do they feel behind the scenes? Like we just, Tommy N, formerly known as Aleister Black, has come out on, how do you pronounce her? Renee Paquette, I guess is how you pronounce her name now. Used to be Renee Young, Moxley's wife, on the podcast talking about, dude, there's no dirt, Phil. There's not an ounce of dirt. There's not even a spoonful of dirt. This guy has nothing negative to say. And I wasn't looking for a shoot. It's fine. If he's fine, then great. But this whole time, we've been sitting back talking about, man, when they release him, because they probably will, I bet he has a story to tell. He's got no story, Phil. He's got nothing. So if he does, he's playing great ex-employee and not burning bridges because he's not saying a thing. And according to him, he's got nothing bad to say. So again, I sit back and I lament the fact that someone doesn't get something like Oscar, and how come this, how come that. We may not even know what the actual reality is, but from our perspective, it does look like she's screwed 6 ways from Sunday. I mean, dude, how do we get it so wrong, or how do they get it so wrong, you think? Where's the separation on all this?
I don't know. It almost feels like at one point they decided, hey, Hunter, here's your thing where you can play and do the indie promotion that you want to book over here in this corner of the world. Have
Yes.
fun. And then they decided, hey, this thing is doing pretty well. It's a big deal. Let's move it up to network television. Let's try and make more money off of it.
Right.
Cool. In theory, that's cool. But then you put it against this thing that it has no business going up against. You put it against somebody else's flagship series. It just doesn't work because they're two different things. They're two different audiences. Um, and then you decide, let's go away from everything that made it work. Let's stop making it a tape show, and basically let's stop making it basically studio wrestling. Let's try and make it into this live thing, and let's try and do this with it. It's just kind of like you guys missed why you started this thing. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they started for other reasons, but it just feels like they did. It feels like they gave Hunter this project, and he did really, really well. And then they were like, "Hey, that did really well. Why don't you let me take a crack at this and let me change this?"
Yeah. Yeah. No, dude, I'm with you. I'm with that 100%. That's what it does seem like. Like, well, you had some success there, kid. Let's put it over here now. Yeah, it's and like you said, dude, we've barely mentioned AEW. We're almost an hour and a half in. We barely mentioned AEW, but I mean, I think the answer is probably yes for everybody listening who knows. But I think you can point to, let's put it on USA, make it 2 hours to compete with Dynamite, because by God, we have to. Because if they can do that, we can do that, and we'll do it first. I mean, isn't that where we think that everything started getting out of control with this brand? Because up to that point, I don't remember complaining about any of it, unless I'm just misremembering it.
Yeah, I think that's where it started. I think once it debuted and it started changing what made it work. I think also a big part of NXT that made it compelling um, was that everything was in service of building to takeovers. And that's why takeovers became like their best pay-per-views, because everything on NXT was centered around building towards that payoff at takeover. And now it's like, because they want to try harder and harder to make NXT must see TV, which you didn't really have to do, because I felt like it was must see TV before that. But must see TV in the sense that if there's something else going on at the same time on another channel, how can we sway those people to go, hey, you have to watch this now. You can't watch it tomorrow. You got to watch it now. And so now you're putting all these cage matches on and all these big stipulation matches, these big title matches, and they're all happening during a week on regular programming, as opposed to it being a special attraction at Takeover. It just kind of dilutes your process, right? It kind of dilutes your programming, doesn't it?
I think so. Yeah, for sure. Um, and I don't want to disrespect the amazing takeovers that we've seen, because, dude, during WrestleMania
Yeah.
weekends, 9 times out of 10, Phil, we were talking about takeover, not even WrestleMania.
Yes. There were definitely points where you had Takeover competing with a Big Four pay per view, and Takeover was the better show.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, prime example, when I said earlier that I went to that Takeover Chicago and I saw Pete Dunne versus Tyler Bate. Takeover Chicago was much better than Backlash, where, if you remember correctly, guys, that's where Jinder Mahal won a WWE Championship.
Come on, Phil. Don't hinder gender. Come on.
So yeah, and that's why I'm like, and the takeovers are still good, but I just think, takeovers feel less special when you're trying to cram all of these things into your weekly programming as well. You're trying to take all of these WCW properties and make them into um, weekly specials, so you can compete with what's happening on the other channel. It's just it's at some point you're overproducing. And I know some people are like, but it's all great television. In some ways it is, but again, you got to look at it in the context that there is a lot of wrestling on television right now. And if you're looking to go, hey, maybe I'll watch AEW Dynamite tonight and save NXT to watch on the network tomorrow, it's not as enjoyable as it used to be. It's
No.
not what it was.
Yeah, it's no, you're right. It's not what it was. And I remember, I remember sitting here, when the announcement was made, they were going to go 2 hours and move it. And then the rumors started coming out that Vince was going to get his hands on it. I remember saying, we'll wait and see. I don't want to just say something bad's going to happen, but I guarantee you, if other hands get on this brand, it's going to change and you may not like what you see. And I think that's exactly what happened. I think God, dude, again, if you really look at this thing under microscope like we tried to do in this show, it's very bizarre that the biggest company on the planet, this biggest pro wrestling company on the planet with all this freaking money, boatloads of money, Phil, boatloads of it, okay? We're going to make this tiny little brand. It's developmental. It's a little itty bitty. It's big. It's just little. We're going to put it in a small building, and it's real closed in, and the same fans come every week, and it's like a hometown promotion. That's what it is. And it's stop. You're $1 billion company. Who are you fooling with this? Do you think I'm falling for, like I don't know who runs this thing? Like I don't know what family's name is on the marquee. What am I, an idiot? And then you want to say, but you want to take that idea, but now you're going to blow it up. Well, we're WWE. We're not going to be pushed around by anybody. This Tony Khan kid, who is this clown? Let's put it on Wednesday. And just like that, with a snap of a finger, they get on Primetime USA without even blinking an eye, without even hesitating. They're going to take this supposedly little, it's just a little brand. You could love this. See, you like that Ring of Honor stuff. You'll love this. But now it's national TV 2 hours a week. A same feel as a brand show, a main brand show. They're putting guest stars on it. They'll throw guys in the main roster down. The ratings aren't good. I mean, come on. But again, for people that fell for this from the beginning, I feel bad for you. Some of us didn't. We knew what this was from the beginning. We may not have been able to put a title on it or name it, but we knew this was the big pro wrestling company trying to do indie pro wrestling with a big time budget. But at the end of the day, Phil, this is still WWE. Maybe that's the point of this whole episode. No matter what we want to call it, it's still WWE, right?
Correct. Yeah, I just, and that's why I'm like, I don't want to jump all over it. It is still good. I just think, like I said, in some ways, I've just been jaded because I was on such a high with it at one point, and then it all just came crashing down.
It did. I agree. I'm with you.
It, like I said, it's still good. There's still a lot of great things they're doing right now. I really enjoy Hit Row. Yeah. Swerve is one of those guys when they signed him that was like, this guy is so good. Like when they signed him right off of the Defiant stuff and all of the stuff he's doing with MLW, and I was like, this guy's a star. I mean, Lucha Underground, like he was the hottest free agent you could sign at that time, and I was like, there's no way they messed this up, right? And I just had to watch for a while until he got this Hit Row thing off the ground. I was like, they're doing it. They're doing what I wanted to hope they wouldn't. And I hope this Hit Row thing is a way to push him up to the next level. But I just don't know. We've seen this so many times now that I just don't know.
Yeah, wait with cautious optimism, I suppose, because there's a reason to have apprehension. I mean, it's WWE, man. I feel like I started negative and I'm ending negative. I really had no intention of doing that, but you're 100% right. It's not a bad show. And Phil, you know how many wrestling fans may listen to this and say, these are two wrestling fans complaining about having good pro wrestling. What is wrong with the world? Maybe they're right. Maybe I'm just complaining about the wrong stuff. I don't know. If I try to really put my thumb on this and tell you why it frustrates me, I guess I could. But the fact that we're getting really good pro wrestling from really good talent, and then, I don't know, maybe that should just be enough. Why isn't that enough? Why isn't that enough for so many of us? Because I feel like, I don't know. If you really corner me, dude, I don't know if I can even answer my own question. I don't know why it's not enough. Like, I'm still going to watch. I'm not going to not watch. Now, people who throw it to me like, oh, well, Tom, you complain about Raw. Brother, I don't watch Raw. I watch clips of Raw on YouTube because I'm done. It's horrible. I'm sorry. It gets worse every week, in my opinion. I can't stomach it anymore. I'm still going to watch NXT. I'm probably still going to watch as much SmackDown as I can. But Raw is horrible to me. I can't do it. So don't tell me a person can't walk away from a show, because they more than can, because I've done it. But I'm not going to walk away from the black and gold brand. It still entertains me. I think the lack of focus is very evident. I do think they shoot from the hip a lot, which I wish they wouldn't do. Do you personally foresee an end in sight? Not everything lasts forever, man. I mean, rumors abound that they may be selling this thing to NBC Universal. Whether or not it happens, who knows? Who knows? Do you think
Yeah,
NXT will always be around, or do you think there'll come a day when they're like, "Yeah, I think we're done with this experiment. Let's just move on"?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I can see a world where they try and merge NXT and NXT UK maybe. Um, as far as them selling, I know this is coming out of the Strowman news and a lot of those other big releases. It seems a lot more plausible that they could sell within the next, few years or so. I don't think it's coming like imminently, but it is possible. This goes back to our conversation with Triple H and Steph. There's some people that believe that it's a family business, excuse me, and they would never sell because they're gonna hand it down and they're gonna let Steph and Triple H run it well. And I just don't see a world where that's true because, for one thing, it has it has grown too big to be considered a family business anymore.
Yeah.
It's a publicly traded company. It's not. This isn't Vince Senior running a promotion in New York anymore.
Right.
It's a publicly traded company. It's the biggest wrestling company in the world. And also to that notion, Vince Senior didn't hand it down to Vince.
No, not at
So
all.
why would Vince hand it down to Steph and Drip? He didn't get the company that way.
No.
If they're going to get the company that way, they're going to have to buy it just like he did.
Yep.
And at this point, it's a bigger price tag on it. So, again, it's not a New York territory anymore. It's not a New York promotion anymore. It's way too big for that. And if somebody's going to buy it, he's going to take this multi-million-dollar deal for it. This is going to be, the Germans coming in and signing the check for Mr. Burns. It's not going to be him deciding, oh, hey, I'm ready to cash out, guys. Here you go. Here you go, Steph. All yours. I just don't see that happening.
There's too many moving parts now. It's not just a wrestling company anymore. That's it. It's an entertainment, a multi-tier, entertainment company. It's not just pro wrestling anymore. They've got a lot of irons in the fire. I mean, it's not just, if this were this, just a pro wrestling company, then I would say, well, yeah, maybe they will just buy it and be fine. But no, he built this thing bigger than pro wrestling for a reason, because he wanted to infiltrate as much mainstream media as he could. Well, he did it. Dude, how many movies, TV shows, syndication, wherever, no matter what walk of life, books, magazines, reference pro wrestling because of Vince. The words WWF, people still know the words WWF. They may not know WWE, but they know WWF. They do know the name Vince McMahon. They've heard it anyway. I mean, it's Hulk Hogan. Everyone knows the name Hulk Hogan. Even if you're not a pro wrestling fan, you know what that name is. And that's all thanks to him. He's the one that made it that way. So, no, there's too many moving parts. And I'm with you. I don't think it happens that way.
No, not for a second. I mean, hey, maybe there's a world where, Triple H and Stephanie already have a plan, and they already have a plan for how they would acquire the company later. But just judging by the history of the company, I'm not sure.
Yeah, good call. And I'm going to take this. I'm going to bring this full circle, Phil, to your KFC analogy, because I think it's appropriate. Don't anybody laugh at that. So, let's say that, this whole idea of Triple H did such a bang up job with NXT that he's going to run the entire company if and when Vince ever steps aside. Let's say KFC, like the Triple H ran the best KFC store in the country. It's the number one store for the company 10 years in a row. He's killing it. The sales are up. They go up every year. They don't dip down. Based on employee surveys, it's a 95% employee satisfaction. Guest interaction. It's the highest marks this little store has ever had. He's built it into something big. Maybe it's been renovated. Maybe it's bigger than it was 5 years ago when he took over. And he's the man. It's the hottest store in the entire company. Biggest one they have, and they're killing it. Now they hand the entire corporation to this guy. But it's no longer just a chicken company. It's more than that. They've got irons in the fire. They're bigger than just a restaurant chain now. They're not what they were in the 70s. This is bigger now. Can that guy run KFC as a corporation? I mean, I don't know. To me, it's the same idea, Phil. How do we expect this guy? Just because he's got a lot of the same ideas? Come on.
Yeah, I mean,
come on.
We're talking about a guy that took a model from the franchise as what it is. So if he gets to the top of the food chain, he's not going to change the power structure. Why would he?
Yeah, exactly.
That power structure that exists did what it needed to. It succeeded for him because he got to the top of it. So why would he change that for other people that look like him? Right?
Right, exactly.
And that goes back to his comments about equality. Hey, you can say all you want about how you book, people of color and how you book women, but if you're not going to change the power dynamic so that there's somebody else in place to answer that question better than you could, it doesn't matter.
No. I mean, not to take a shot on the way out of the door, kids, but this is the same guy who probably doesn't see the problem, but with the Booker T storyline. And I hate to throw that curveball at you, Phil, at the end, but we all know what that storyline was. And they could dress it up and say, Tom, it's just pro wrestling. You take this stuff too legit. Shut up. I know what that was. I remember at the time, my circle of white friends. This is no BS, Phil. We're watching the TV because we watch the Monday shows together. We all hang out and watch. We're watching that, and we all looked at each other in the room and said, oh my God, what? Like we were in... Dude, Phil, we're white guys in the South, and we're insulted by the idea that Booker T, because he's black... What? Dude, I think we turned it. I think we turned it off because it's like, I can't believe they're going there. Even back then, before we were all woke, right? Even then we were insulted. It was horrible. Now, does he today think it's horrible? Dude, you'd have to ask him. I don't know. What would he say? I wonder.
Hey, he ducks that conversation anytime it's brought up. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. And that's why, there was a point where Keith Lee won a championship, and I said, hey guys, NXT is this land of milk and honey. It's where all these people get all these more opportunities. Why are there only 2 black NXT champions then?
Ooh.
And, somebody even at one point was like, wasn't he the first champion? I was like, oh no, there's Big E.
Right.
There's 2. So I was like, are we supposed to believe that there has never been another black man that's come through there that's good enough to be champion? Not Apollo Crews, not Ricochet, not Leo Rush, not ACH, none of those guys. Yeah, but again, I won't like you get into throwing all of my shots. It's a very curious thing.
I think it's better to ask the question than to not ask the question. People get upset when you point things out. Not you, well, maybe you personally. I don't know. But when people point things out like this, people get all upset. Well, why even talk about it? Well, I think I would rather have someone point it out than not have it pointed out. I think is if for no other reason, Phil, then you or whoever pointing it out makes someone like me go, "Oh my God, I never thought about that." Because I think that those kind of things need to be said. Now, is it 100% true? I don't know. I'm not in the meeting room behind closed doors, kids, and I'm not one of those pro wrestling podcaster guys that says I know absolutely and 100%. Because when you use words like that and you get proven wrong, you're a schmuck. So no, I don't know. I can tell you what I think. That's all I can do. But dude, if it makes me stop and ponder what your point is, then I think that's a good thing. We need those conversations, I believe.
For sure. And, again, I threw that parting shot in there with there's only 2 black NXT champions. But it's something I've definitely wondered. There was a certain guy that they just released that sure looked like he was very close to being NXT champion. And yeah, turned into a colossal disaster.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, on that overwhelming positive note, um, which, listen, man, I think everybody listening, and I think you two will agree, there's a lot of layers to this. This isn't just an episode on a particular TV show. This is, and Phil, maybe it's hard because they've made it hard. I mean, maybe we should just put the blame on them because this was their creation to begin with. They're the ones that can't figure out to tell us what it is. They're the ones that change the thing's identity every 2 seconds, it seems. And it's almost like the talent's sitting around the locker room going, "Okay, what are we doing again? What?" Like I just came out of a locker room on a Saturday night where everyone got along. And yes, kids, it's possible for everyone to get along and to be, "Hey, boss, what do you want done?" And I go, this, and this. They go, "Cool. Can we try this?" "Yes, sir. Go have fun." It's entirely possible, Phil, to take this thing back bare bones. But again, this is not a pro wrestling company. It's just not. And I think once people accept that, if it's possible to accept it, they won't have quite as much heartburn anymore, if that's possible.
Yeah.
So, all right. Fun part. If possible, give me your last word on NXT.
I think NXT is going to go down as one of the biggest creative booms for the company in a long time. But at the same time, it kind of has to find its way now that it's evolving into something else. And I'm both curious and very leery about watching it become that.
I totally agree. And I think in the time that I've met you online and we've been doing the show together, I have heard you more often than not pop up on a Thursday and we'll make small talk before we record and then we'll discuss the shows of the previous night or what have you. And you have made the statement more often than not up to this point said, "I haven't watched NXT yet. I just haven't watched it." When you were never saying that in the beginning. And now it's more and more and more and more and more. And I haven't watched it yet, which tells me that, I think there's an issue here to talk about, which is why we did this episode, kids, because
Yeah,
it's not
I
what it
mean,
used to be,
and I think it's helped that it's moved to Tuesday.
Sure.
And it's not up against anything on Tuesday. For sure, when I was working and I watched everything, it got really hard to watch both shows simultaneously. So a lot of times NXT would get put on the back burner, and I would go, "Okay, well, I'm gonna watch it tomorrow night," and then stuff would get in the way, and I'd end up watching it. But again, to your point, it does say something about what has become of NXT that I was not in a hurry to rush to go watch it.
Yeah, and this is from longtime pro wrestling fans here, folks. This is not a couple of guys that just started watching last week. This is longtime pro wrestling fans. So, yeah, it's one of the things that's great about us as a whole is that we're pretty loyal. If you do right by us, we'll tend to stick with you. No matter who the company is, we'll tend to stick with you. But you start screwing with us, first the complaining starts, then it gets louder and louder and louder, and a lot of us do walk away. It's entirely possible to walk away from one company and go to another. Some of us have done it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a reason there for concern, in my opinion. This company would care about it if they were a pro wrestling company, but again, they're not. So because they're not, they don't care. It is what it is. I'm with you 100%. This brand is evolving into what? I don't know either. I don't know if I'm going to like the outcome, but I guarantee you this, we'll keep talking about it. We'll keep debating it. We may even revisit this topic at some point as we see what may or may not happen with a possible company sale. We'll have to monitor that and see how it goes. In the meantime, I still enjoy NXT. I don't think it's a lost cause. I don't know if I've ever thought that. I just think it's different. I love some of the things they're doing right now. A lot of other things I don't. It is what it is. It's all subjective. At the end of the day, kids, if you take anything away from this, it's this. Hopefully. This is all subjective. You may disagree with everything I just said and love everything Phil said, or vice versa. I don't know. Or think that we're both suck. It's entirely possible. And guess who's right? No one. You're not right. Maybe we're not right either. And that's okay. It's all subjective. What you may love to watch, maybe we hate it. And the other way around too could be entirely true. So watch what makes you happy. If you don't like NXT, don't watch it. It's real easy. Find what you love, watch it and enjoy it because life's too short. So that's how I'm bringing this home, and that's how we're ending it. And that is NXT. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Check out our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6M Podcast. We'll see you next time.